Carl Jung said, "The mother is the first world and also the first abyss. You are born and you are already trapped. Trapped in a body that nourishes you, but also shapes you. Trapped in a love that seems absolute, but which little by little begins to consume you from within. She is affection, but she is also a shadow. She is comfort, but she is also a prison. And before you even understand what freedom is, you are already immersed in the deepest illusion of masculinity. The illusion of the woman who welcomes everything, understands everything, holds everything. A man's first love is his mother. But what no one told you is that this love, when not integrated, becomes a curse. You grow up, your body matures, your desires change. But something in you keeps seeking the same thing, unconditional acceptance. The woman who never demands, who never rejects, who never frustrates you. The woman who sees you as unique, special, flawless. Except that this woman does not exist. Because this woman is the shadow of your mother, projected onto all others. You think you are in love, but you are only hypnotized by the unhealed wound of your mother. And so you seek her in other women's bodies. You desire her in faces that are not hers. You call her love, when in fact you are just trying to return to the womb. But that return does not exist, because the womb that once formed you also paralyzed you. You grew up, but part of you stayed there, trapped, waiting to be held, waiting for permission, waiting for validation. And that's why you feel small around certain women. That's why you emotionally kneel for attention. That's why, even when you're in a relationship, you feel like an orphan. Carl Jung called this the maternal complex, an invisible but real force that sucks away your autonomy and transforms desire into dependence. You don't love women. You want to be loved by them as you were, or as you never were, by your mother. This is the truth that destroys the male ego, but it is also the only thing that can set it free. Because as long as you don't confront this shadow, you will continue to attract the wrong kind of woman. The woman who protects you, but emasculates you. The woman who kisses you, but weakens you. The woman who envelops you, but never allows you to grow. And worst of all, you will call it love. But it is not love. It is symbolic imprisonment. It is dependence disguised as affection. It is the repetition of a bond that should have been severed, but has been romanticized. You are not in love, you are projecting, and until you realize this, you will remain a half-man. Because true virility is not born of desire, it is born of rupture, of the symbolic severing of the womb that once gave you life, but now prevents you from living. Carl Jung did not hate his mother. He just knew that no man becomes whole until he unties the invisible knot that binds him to the primordial woman. And you? Have you cut that knot, or are you still living relationships born of absence? Are you still calling love what is only ancestral longing? Perhaps this is the time to look at the woman you desire most and ask, are you desire, or are you a prison disguised as affection? Because the woman you desire may not be your partner. She may be your mother in another body. And until you see this clearly, you will never be a complete man. The woman you desire is often the echo of an absence you dare not name. Carl Jung saw this between the lines of the male soul. When a man does not confront his inner mother, he does not choose his lovers, he repeats them. And so the man walks not for freedom, but for repetition. He approaches women who represent the same psychic structure as the mother figure: conditional love, fickle affection, emotional control masked as care. This is no coincidence. It is a pattern. It is the maternal complex in action. But what does this mean? It means that your unconscious is still trying to resolve what was left unresolved. The cold woman you insist on conquering, the emotionally unstable woman you try to heal with your presence, the woman who dominates you sexually and at the same time infantilizes you emotionally. All these figures do not arise by chance. They are living symbols of an untreated archetypal wound. And the worst part is that the more they hurt you, the more you believe you are in love, because that pain is familiar. It's the same silent pain you felt when your mother ignored you, criticized you, pressured you, or simply suffocated you with a love that left no room for you to exist. The soul recognizes this environment. And deep down, the man thinks, if I can get this woman's love, I'll finally be validated. But this is an illusion. Validation will never come, because she's not the one you need to settle scores with. It's your psychic mother. It's the inner image of the woman who made you, a man, but who also prevented you from being one completely. And until that confrontation happens, you will be a slave to your projected anima. You will see women as a lifeline, and not as a mirror of your own psyche. You will give too much of yourself. You will give yourself away too quickly. You will empty yourself without realizing it, and she in turn will feel that something is out of place, because no woman wants to be the eternal womb of an adult man, but she also doesn't know what's going on. Because this process is invisible, silent, ancestral, and then conflicts arise. You demand too much. She pulls away. You feel fear. She feels pressure. You want to be loved unconditionally, but you demand this from a woman who didn't give birth to you. And she unconsciously responds, I'm not your mother. But your unconscious has already made the switch. You don't see her as she is. You see her as the mother you never had or the mother who was too much, and all your masculinity, your capacity to love your presence, your strength, dissolve in this psychic tangle. Carl Jung called this anima possession when a man becomes an instrument of unconscious feminine forces within himself. And in this state, you don't love, you beg, you don't relate, you cling, you don't build, you repeat. And the saddest thing is that all of this happens under the guise of true love. You say, I love her so much. But in reality, you are begging to be seen as the boy who was once neglected or as the boy who never got to grow up. The desire is real, but the motivation is childish, and that keeps you stuck. You work, you struggle, you evolve intellectually. But emotionally, you remain in the same place waiting to be held, waiting for her to save you from the pain of being left, waiting for her to complete you. When in fact, it is you who is still incomplete. You want her to see you as a man. But how could she? If you still live like a child, true maturity begins when you realize this. When you look at the desire you feel and ask yourself, is this the woman I love, or is it my childhood deprivation speaking for me? Be honest. Because as long as the maternal wound remains unseen, you will continue to desire the wrong woman. And worse, you will blame them all for not loving you the way you believe you deserve. But the problem is not them. It is you. It is the wounded boy inside the man. And he will only stop screaming when you have the courage to face him head on. Take a good look at the pattern that repeats itself. You approach women who enchant you, but who also drain you. Women who challenge you, but don't welcome you. Women who desire you, but don't really see you. And somewhere in your unconscious, something whispers, maybe now I'm enough. But no matter how much you give, it's never enough. Because the woman you're trying to win over isn't real. She is the symbol of your wounded, fragmented soul still connected to your inner mother. And that symbol is addicted to proving itself, pleasing others, molding itself. You don't just want to be loved. You want to be validated as a man. But you're looking for it in the wrong place, in the wrong body, in the wrong affection. Because the recognition you desire does not come from women. It comes from within yourself. As long as you are driven by this unconscious desire to be enough for her, you will live a life of silent frustration, and you will be easily manipulated by any touch of affection that reminds you of being held. Carl Jung warned us, "The man who does not integrate his mother will be eternally ruled by her, even when she is no longer alive." Because the mother here is not just the biological figure. She is an archetype. She is the first female you ever knew, the first love, the first trauma, the first enchantment. And if that bond is not reframed, every female you encounter thereafter will be nothing more than a distorted mirror of that shadow. You sleep with women, but you are embracing your emotional mother. You fall in love, but you are stuck in childhood. And the most dangerous thing, it's that all of this comes packaged under the name of love. But true love begins when the archetype is broken. When you look at the woman in front of you and say silently, "I don't need you to save me. I don't need you to validate me. I don't need you to love me like a mother." Only then do you begin to love her as a man. Until that happens, you will continue to project. And projections have an expiration date, because sooner or later she will realize that you don't see her for who she is. You see her as a symbol, as an altar where you deposit your unresolved pain, your unhealed needs, your unprocessed childhood. And no one can stand being the altar of a wounded man for long. That's why you lose desire so quickly. That's why you feel anger for no apparent reason. That's why when you finally conquer her, something in you dies. Because what you wanted wasn't her. It was the feeling of being accepted by the primordial feminine. It was winning an invisible battle against maternal absence, but no woman came to fill that void. She can walk by your side. She can inspire you. She can even love you deeply, but she can't rebuild you. That's your job. And that's why so many men live oscillating between desire and resentment. They desire women, but they hate them for not being what they expected them to be. They want freedom, but they hand her the chains. They want to be men, but they ask to be held like little boys. And that breaks everything. Because desire cannot survive dependence. Love cannot grow where there is idolatry. And the feminine cannot flourish in the presence of a masculine that still needs to ask permission. As long as you look for your mother in every woman, you will be nothing but an echo of what you could have been. Carl Jung saw this as one of the greatest spiritual tragedies of modern man, living as an adult, but being controlled by invisible childish forces. And there is only one path to liberation's symbolic rupture. Breaking with the archetype, with the desire to be rescued, with the possessive anima that chains you. You need to kill this psychic bond. You need to bury the boy, not to kill him, but to allow the man to finally be born. And this birth does not happen with screams. It happens in silence. The moment you look inside and say, "I am responsible for myself. I am the man she could never build. I am no longer the emotional son of any woman." That is the cut. That is the mourning. That is the initiation that Carl Jung knew few were willing to live through. Because it is painful, but it is necessary. And it is the only way you will ever truly love. The liberation of man begins when he stops begging for love and starts building presence. But this building does not come from desire. It comes from pain. From the pain of realizing that all the women who enchanted you were just shadows of the woman who hurt you. From the pain of understanding that you weren't in love with them. You were addicted to the chance of being seen. That's why so many relationships sink without explanation. Because you weren't there as a man. You were there as a child who was afraid. You asked for love, but offered guilt. You asked for affection, but vibrated scarcity. You said, "I love you," but desperately wanted to be chosen. And that's where many fall, because they think the problem lies with women. But Carl Jung said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. The woman who rejects you is showing her own rejection of herself. The woman who doesn't respect you is reflecting your lack of inner integrity. The woman who attracts you but destroys you is revealing how you treat your own psyche with desire but without presence. And the only real way out is to stop looking for her. It is to stop chasing a feminine that only exists on a symbolic level. You don't need another woman. You need a funeral, a symbolic funeral, where you bury the needy child, where you free your inner mother, where you strip yourself of the need to be saved, and where for the first time you stand naked in front of the mirror and see yourself as a man. This is what Carl Jung called the process of individuation, the psychic journey of becoming who you really are, far from complexes, projections, and unconscious repetitions. And the starting point is this: look inside, admit your attachment, feel the pain of absence, cry if you need to, but don't wait any longer, not for her, not for anyone. Because the man who waits never leads. And a woman can only trust a man who doesn't put her on the altar of his neediness. From this symbolic break, something changes. You begin to see her as she is, not as you would like her to be. You stop looking for your mother, and you begin to see the woman. You stop begging for love, and start building value. You stop feeling rejected, and start respecting your own limits. And then the true soul emerges, not the one that dominates you, but the one that inspires you. The one that doesn't hold you back in childhood, but walks with you into maturity. This woman doesn't need to save you. She recognizes you, but she can only recognize you after you recognize yourself first. This is the secret that initiated men know. They do not seek in women what they lost in childhood. They offer to women what they discovered within themselves. And then, the cycle is broken, the pattern dissolves. The prison of desire becomes a bridge to real love, not a love of need, but of overflowing abundance, not a love of ego, but of soul. Carl Jung knew this. He knew that behind every uncontrolled passion there was a hidden mother, and behind every rejection there was an invisible boy in pain. But he also knew that the man who goes through this darkness becomes someone no woman can manipulate. Not because he is cold, but because he is whole, and a whole man does not desire to fill a void. He wants to add to himself. He doesn't love to heal himself. He loves because he is healed, and that is the turning point that no one sees, because it doesn't make a sound, but it changes everything. You don't need another woman, you need silence. The silence that comes after the internal scream that says, "I wasn't seen." The silence that comes when you stop looking outside for what can only be found inside. This is the fertile emptiness, the pain that does not paralyze, but that begins. It begins the morning of childhood. It begins the goodbye to neediness. It begins the birth of a man who owes nothing to the past. Because when you let go of the image of the ideal mother, you also let go of the need to be perfect, to be loved unconditionally, to be protected all the time. And that paradoxically sets you free. You weren't born to be the emotional child of any woman. You were born to be a root, to be a presence, to be a center. Carl Jung said that a man who integrates his mother shadow does not become an enemy of the feminine. He becomes a guardian. A clean mirror, a channel of presence where women can exist without having to carry you. This is the man who does not beg for affection. He offers clarity. This is the man who does not bend over backwards to be loved. He stands his ground to be respected. This is the man who doesn't need to prove he's a man, because he already is. And when this maturity enters the body, everything changes. You don't chase after things. You walk steadily. You don't demand attention. You exude presence. You don't seduce with promises. You attract with silence. And deep down, that's what she was hoping for. Not a boy enchanted by her lap, but a whole man who knows where he stands. You can become that man. But first, you have to choose. Choose to leave the archetype behind. Choose to descend into the original pain. Choose to no longer be a child who desires, but a man who inhabits. If you felt this, if this script brought out some forgotten truth, then it's because you've already started the process. Now don't stop. Like this, if you no longer want to live in the womb of your childhood, comment if you are ready to bury the boy, and share with those who still confuse desire with need.